because as a defender at Manchester United, you can't just be a defender, you have to be an attacker as well, especially if you're a full-back, and you have to be able to go forward, cross the ball.
Always prim and proper, always very perfect in everything he did, and I didn't really...
He was a professional footballer.
I had the most comfortable moments in my career when one of the most hardest positions to defend was going on, because I had Gary Neville there. Gary Neville is unmatched.
Gary Neville has announced he's retiring from football.
Gary Neville built his career as Manchester United's right back through consistency, leadership, and defensive intelligence. But football has changed a lot. Fullbacks are now expected to be creators, not just defenders. So how would Gary Neville do if he was thrown into today's game? Let's compare the battles that he fought back then to the ones that he'd be facing now.
Welcome to the footy zone, where the ball rolls free. From the Premier to the Liga, this the place to be. Champions rise, underdogs dream to the creek. In the footy zone, where the world can agree.
The opponents of the past. In his prime, Gary Neville defended against some of the best left-sided attackers in the world. Think about it, he had Ryan Giggs in training every day, which would be a nightmare for any defender. In the Premier League, he faced Robert Pires at Arsenal, who was about clever movement and also link-up play with Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp. Then he dealt with Damien Duff, who was a direct winger who loved to cut inside. And I mean, if we're really thinking about it, he really had to come up against so many talented players. I mean, I didn't even mention Cristiano Ronaldo in training. And then just going through the list of some other players that he came up against, there was players like Joe Cole, who often played on the left. There was Harry Kewell when he was at Liverpool. There was Ashley Young when he was at Aston Villa. There was Gareth Bale when he was playing on the left at Tottenham. Then there was players like Florian Malouda when he was at Chelsea, Andre Arshavin, and then even some other tough players like Steve Guppy or Matthew Etherington. The list goes on, but this was really the type of players that really you need to be a great defender in order to stop them. And Gary Neville did that on more than one occasion. And then when you take a look at Europe, Neville came up against names like Luis Figo, Mark Overmars, and even a young Cristiano Ronaldo before they were teammates. These are the players that all tested positioning, discipline, and the ability to stop a winger who could either cross the ball in, go for the attack, or just drift down the wings at incredible speed. And Gary Neville just knew how to beat most of them. Neville excelled at this because he was smart, rarely diving in, always forcing attackers where they didn't want to go. And this was something that made him a pretty special right back. The opponents of today. Now, if we take a step back and we imagine what Neville would be facing today, well, it's pretty funny to think of all the different kinds of wingers that we have in today's football. I mean, can anyone imagine Gary Neville coming up against Vinícius Jr, a Kylian Mbappé who was playing on the left wing, a Luis Diaz, or even a Marcus Rashford? The difference between back then and now is that there's a different level of pure pace that you see in wingers today. The type of wingers who thrive on cutting inside instead of crossing in the ball. And that would make the challenge pretty tough for Gary Neville. Unlike Pires or Duff, these players aren't just tricky, they are explosive footballers with incredible acceleration. The tempo of today's game is also much faster, and wingers press aggressively, forcing fullbacks to be comfortable in possession. And this is where Gary Neville might struggle. He wasn't exactly known for his dribbling out of tight spaces or spraying 40-yard passes to start attacks. Today's right backs like Trent Alexander-Arnold or Achraf Hakimi, they are often playing like playmakers. Now, Neville wasn't that kind of a player back in the day, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he still couldn't thrive. How he'd adapt. The thing is, guys, you can't write off this legend. Neville's strength was his football intelligence. He studied opponents meticulously. Against someone like Vinícius Jr, he wouldn't try to beat him for pace. He'd position himself perfectly to block the inside run or rely on cover from his center backs, who at the time, remember, was Nemanja Vidic and Rio Ferdinand. And before that, it was Jaap Stam. And I mean, let's say he came up against a player like Son. Then Neville would use his experience to force him out wide, cutting off those diagonal runs that he likes to do. In modern systems, he'd probably resemble someone like Cesar Azpilicueta, or even a Kyle Walker in the latter years of his career when the pace wasn't exactly there. but the brains still is there. Not bombing forward to whip in endless crosses, but sitting back, staying disciplined, and letting the more attacking fullbacks or wingers do the creative work. Now the question is, would he survive? Yes, but in a different way. In today's game, Neville wouldn't be the headline-making assist-heavy fullback. He'd be the defender that managers trust in big games to lock down elite wingers. Think about it. If he could handle Ronaldo and Giggs in training, and then Perez, Duff, Figo, and so many other wingers, all without looking out of place, why couldn't he cope with a Rashford or Luis Diaz today? He might not shut them down completely, but he'd make life pretty difficult. And in elite football, sometimes that is more than enough. So how would Gary Neville do in today's football? He wouldn't be Trent, he wouldn't be Cancelo or Hakimi, but he'd definitely still be effective. A defensive fullback who thrives in the big games, knows how to neutralize top wingers, and gives managers something priceless: reliability. The names of opponents may have changed, but his intelligence and his discipline would still make him a valuable asset to almost any team in almost any era. But the most important question is, what do you think? Would Gary Neville survive in today's football, or would he be exposed by pace, flair, and a whole lot of other attacking attributes from modern day wingers? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe, guys, and I will catch you on the next one.